vegetated communities, good ones, bad ones, and things we need to do not only from enhancing, but managing and maintaining the current conditions that are out there. So we're thrilled to be part of the team that is looking at an update to the master planning process that has already gone in the past. And I think a lot of you are well aware of the beautiful new beach house and parking facilities and best management, sustainable practices that have been employed there. Beautiful facility on the beach. Everybody's proud of it. And it's really a hallmark of good things that are to come as part of future master planning. So I say that with the fact that there's been planning done and we're building on that. We are not reinventing the wheel. We are going back and saying, what areas do we need to readdress, reprioritize, put in the mix, get a little better handle on from an internal aspect of what are we looking for? What do these things cost? What do they cost to manage and operate them? It's not just build them, but what does it cost to operate these? And then to share those thoughts and get community input and engagement in terms of let's tap into the area stakeholders. Let's tap into some of this more what I would call the micro groups. Let's talk to the bigger community of what could make Gillson even better than it already is. And we can always find, I think it's important to know, you can always find lots of bad things with it, but it's a pretty spectacular place. And it offers just a tremendous array of programs and opportunities for just about every demographic of the community, and everybody should be proud of it. With that said, I want to also note that there's other ongoing side-by-side studying looking at the waterfront and the impacts of the high water level on our beaches and the erosion and changing atmosphere of sand, so to speak, up and down the beachfront. And that's particularly germane to the conversation today with you folks with regards to the dog beach. Dog beaches have become a big institution in many communities. I know that in the community I live in, just north of you in Winnetka, we have a dog beach, and there's a strong sense in the community that dog beach is nice, but we also want to have a dog park. And there's a big dynamic between what that means for different types of people. And I think it's important to understand we're trying to meet the widest and broadest audience. But today's conversation focuses on Gillson Park and Beach. It focuses on how the dog community uses the dog beach facility, how it could be better, how we are managing it, and how we are maintaining it is an important part of the consideration. And we want to keep it positive in what we can do to be better. We've had conversations today with the Coast Guard folks. We've had conversations with our friends at MWRD and our friends at the city engineering. And we want to understand the total dynamics of what's going on in the park. All the information we're taking in that we're listening from you is going to be put into a big pot that will be the recipe of developing an effective master plan. An effective master plan has to have community voice. It has to have strong buy-in. It has to have manageable and achievable solutions that work within the means of the community. That doesn't mean we do pie in the sky things that can never happen, but we want to come up with a plan. I know Steve and his board want to come up with a plan that's actionable and that meets the most benefit of the community. So with that, we'd love to hear your thoughts on the dog beach, but we also open it up to the whole park if there are things we can do better anywhere. Our whole team here is to listen and hear your thoughts and document it all. And I want to make a point, we are recording everything today for record purposes. So thank you. Anybody's open to dive in. There's no order of preference.
I think Janine Freeman, I think you're talking with the mask on, but we can't hear you. You're muted.
Okay, so you say you're Frank.
I'm Frank. Yeah, it's really, so, you know, there's really no way to keep them in. The water keeps on changing. But if to me, the dog beach would be 10 times better if you could combine those two beaches for the dog beach for 8 months out of the year. I understand they need it for boats in the summertime, but there's no reason why that thing from September or middle of September to the, you know, the beginning of, you know, middle of April can't be used as a dog beach also, because nobody uses it except people come there to sit and take pictures, just like they do on the dog beach. So if they could have you put up that fence real quick for the, that COVID, just have a fence like that where you could bow it out just to keep the dogs in there, because they walk over the fence half the time. People are running around the park chasing their dogs because it's a fence, but it's not really a fence.
You want to, hey, Tom, could you put up the map so we could just get a better handle on when people are talking about what areas they're thinking about?
See, there's a dog beach, and then there's a beach about the same size right next to it. If they could just incorporate that, for 9 months out of the year, because it's not being used at all.
Yeah, so let's point out where the existing dog beach is right now. And then you're talking about what would be the area immediately to the north.
Right.
Yeah.
The aquatic beach. My daughter went to the park district here for years. And that's the only time it's used is in the summertime to pull the jet skis, the boats. And I understand that. Then it's not a dog beach anymore. But I don't know why they couldn't just expand the whole thing and get some kind of temporary fence up from the rocks all the way to the street and bow it out just to make it, so they have to climb over the rocks and swim. Then they're going to leave the beach. But just to make it a bigger beach, because last Saturday there was probably 40 dogs on the beach. It wasn't a dog beach. It was just like, chaos.
So what you're implying is there's not enough space at certain times.
On some days, early in the morning, it's fine. But like even this spring, when you get those big waves, there is no dog beach. The dog beach is you're standing in water as your dog's running around. You got to go to high ground.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
Sorry. Hi, Steve. This is Janine. I think I sent you some pictures that the fence does not act as a perimeter to the dog beach. The dogs can jump over the fence, they go around the fence, and they run into the parking lot. And they also sort of frighten people who are just out taking pictures or just walking. So there's no secure boundary of the dog park, dog beach.
So Janine, there's two things here that I'm hearing. One is we need some more, we feel like we need a little bit more space because the dogs are already moving between these two areas anyhow.
Right.
That's one area. Then the other topic that Janine just brought up was the concept of maintaining the dogs, keeping the dogs, corralling the dogs into the space you want them to be in so that they don't migrate to other areas. And that's the management aspect of it, right?
Right.
Okay.
Hi.
In Brooklyn, New York, what they do is they open up the parks for dogs, like from 5 in the morning to 8 o'clock. All dogs are off leash, all parks. And then I know that never happened in Wilmette in a million years. But then at 8 o'clock, then it's back to leash laws. I mean, even something like that, if they could open up parts of it, because when it's flooding, when those are big waves, your dog could get dragged out. I mean, they've got that huge open space that's not even touched for 8 months in the middle of Gillson. As a matter of fact, I think they sprayed a hockey rink there. But there's a huge space. We used to run the dogs in there until we got kicked off. But just some kind of set time where the dogs could go there just for, 2 hours in the morning, just to be done with it. Because there's just so much space and there's, 2 acres being used for dog parks with a fence.
So let other people talk.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Hi. Oh,
Go ahead.
I wanted to add to what Frank and Janine said. I'm an avid dog beach goer, and I agree. If we could incorporate the aquatic beach as part of the dog beach and secure the area more, I think it is wasted space, so to speak. And the dogs do end up going around the fence or over the fence. So I agree with them there. I do see the need to have some sort of dog park where all the green space is, but I have some close friends who take their dogs on leash and train in that area, and off leash dogs can be dangerous if, like she's training a German Shepherd and a little toy something comes over. So that might be difficult to navigate using that space, unless it was like a kind of a run situation. And again, you would need a pass to get in.
And I have a question for Steve real quick. Steve, is there a fee for a pass holder to get into the dog? I can't remember if there is or not.
Yes, there's a permitting process and a fee differential between resident and non-residents, but there is a fee, yes. And we have to verify all the proper shots and veterinary papers are in line with the Cook County laws about dog parks.
Okay. Okay.
I can jump in with some thoughts if
Sure.
previous
Go ahead.
speakers have spoken. Just to step back a second, just to be clear, is the idea to keep the dog beach but to enhance it, or is there a concept to eliminate the dog beach?
There's no concept at all. We are just listening to all good thoughts and we'll put it into the mix. So if you've got some new ideas, share them.
Perfect. So I would say my number one priority is to keep the beach, especially in the summer months. My dog overheats, so my only choice is to go to a location that has water, because he likes to chase the ball and chase the frisbee. And I've had that with my other dogs too. So my number one boat, everything aside, I have a couple other ideas too, but my number one boat, everything aside, would be to have water. So that'd be number one. I do enjoy, in the current location, I do enjoy the trees, especially. They give some nice shade, especially in the afternoon as the sun's going down. They spread some shade across the beach. So that's really nice to kind of keep things cool, and especially July and August. I also enjoy that back area. So if you go away from the beach through the little trees and there's kind of a mound there, yeah, along like the marina there is a little kind of chute in there. And sometimes and more in the winter months, if the wind is out of the east and the beach is just like really frigid and windy, sometimes I'll go back there. I'm protected by that mound that's there, which is nice, and the trees that kind of cut the wind. And it's nice back there in like the January, February kind of months when it can be colder outside. So I really enjoy that part of it, kind of a protected area.
That's Grosse Point back in there, theoretically, right?
I'm not sure if that has a name. Oh yeah, you're right. Yep, I see it on the map now. Dog Beach, Grosse Point. Yeah, exactly, right where the arrow is. Yep, that's
it's
nice.
a little like you almost have to walk over a little sand dune, and there's a bunch of rocks and stuff in there, and there's a mound, and it's just kind of a hidden little space. Sometimes you see people back in there, who pull up in a kayak or whatever. It's just a little leftover space.
It's nice, and it's kind of a chute. So for fetching dogs, it's also a nice area that he can run and kind of go back and forth in there. So it's not a large space, but it's long. So a fetching dog can run back and forth back in there. Yeah, that's really nice.
Great.
And then I do kind of, as if you are looking at other locations, I do enjoy that this beach is off to the side, especially going to the beach when all of our dogs are super duper excited. To get through crowds, I would anticipate would be a little bit of a challenge. So I just like that it's isolated. It's kind of on its own. I just think it's safer that way.
Sure.
Oh yeah, that's right. And that's kind of a reflection of our area. It's nice that it's shallow all the way out. So for those of us that throw objects into the water, our dog can really run most of it and maybe swimming at the extremes of the distance as far as we can throw. But it is nice that it's shallow, so it is safer for the dogs. And then finally, just a totally different idea too, as far as security. I'm sure, especially outside of the summer months, that a lot of people go there that haven't registered their dogs. And short of a fee, I know you guys check for vaccinations being up to date and all those kind of safety things. But I've seen other parks now adding security access where you get a card and you swipe the card to get in. It's oftentimes double gated, which is a lot safer too. The area where we're at, the gate is, sometimes you can close it and sometimes it's hard to because the sand blows in there. and makes it difficult to close that gate. But the double gates are nice because then, you know, when you walk up to the fence, all the other dogs see you coming, and so they congregate at the gate, and that's where potentially a dog can get loose because they're all off leash. So I've seen the double gated ones, and more recently, I'm seeing them using key cards to get in. So then you can guarantee more that those owners whose dogs are vaccinated and they paid their fees and they're following all the rules, and their residents or non-residents that pay the higher fee, that it's more of a secure area. And that kind of goes with the previous comments that if that side fence was taller, then the average Joe and Spot, their dog, couldn't just climb over that fence and get into that area. Or on the lower water days, you can just walk around that fence because the water doesn't get to the fence at the water line. So those are kind of my ideas, unless you had questions about those comments.
That's great.
Great.
I think we'll come back to some of those topics as we get through everybody here.
Thanks.
So I'll jump in. This is Ryrie Pelleton, in part because I have had some similar thoughts about the fencing, and having talked to many of the people who were down there early in the morning, one of the things that came up as a suggestion was improved signage so that people understand that it is a dog beach. It's not a people beach area, and that it is a you know, you pay for the privilege of doing it. There was a fellow who was down there one day who brought his little girl, and she was a toddler. And of course, the dogs were, many of them were larger than she was, and he was scared and frightened, and she was scared and frightened. And he was very offended because he kept telling people to get their dogs under control. And this was on the dog beach itself. And of course, all of the dog owners were thinking, what are you talking about? So I think that there's a bit of a lack of clarity, and that if there is improved fencing, that would go a long way to helping that out. Some of it is the demarcation is blurred because there is access through there for sailors through the Grosse Point area, which I object to the characterization that it's a leftover space. It's definitely not, and it's used regularly by the dog owners for walking. If you're not interested in having your dog in the big packs running up and down the beach, there are a lot of people who go there, or as Mr. French said, to do fetch, or stay out of the wind. I mean, that is a big thing during the winter. And some of the other items that have been brought up, one of them was the dogs going around the end of the fence, either in the water or as the water level rises and goes down. I don't know that that's one that you guys can necessarily solve. The suggestion that Frank had earlier of extending the fence all the way to the jetty and then down the jetty to the water would certainly help some of that, because then the dogs, when the water is low, would have to scramble on the rocks, but they would do that. And the ones that are bound and determined to get out certainly would. I've been down there long enough that I've seen the water low, seen the water high, seen the Parks District staff add sections of fence, take out sections of fence. And if you guys could solve that problem, that would be incredible. But there doesn't seem to be a solution that comes to mind readily. Stopping the beavers from cutting down the trees, that would be super. Putting some sort of porta-john close to that beach, since the closest one is by the tennis courts, is a suggestion that a couple of people have mentioned to me. And monitoring it so that only people with passes are able to get there, which is a similar but different variation of what Mr. French was saying about, you know, the key card access. And then the fact that Grosse Pointe area is also used as a storage facility during the summer for the aquatics is another one where there's then tension between the staff that are going in and out of there to access the storage containers and the dogs that are running around in there. And while I don't have a problem with it, and my dog certainly doesn't ever go anywhere, there are a lot of other people who've had dogs either escape or they have to stand by the gate the whole time in order to make sure that the dog doesn't get out. So those are some of the issues, and I you know, I like the fact that it is where it is because people aren't going to walk through it generally. You know, you don't have to traverse the dog park to get to somewhere else, but you do have to walk from Overlook Drive where the parking is in order to get down there. And I don't want to suggest that we have more parking or add parking that's closer to it, but that would help to solve that problem.
Great.
That's it.
Great.
Great, thank you.
Have some things to add.
Mhm.
Hi, I'm Martha Hellander, and I appreciate the opportunity to participate in this. I have a Tibetan Spaniel, so he's a small dog. And I wonder, well, first of all, I just want to affirm, you know, that I love that location. I'm down there a lot with my dog. And I think it's an ideal place. I hadn't thought that there might be any idea of moving it. So please don't move it. We'll keep it there. I think we could use more trash receptacles. I know that when I'm playing in there, my dog's name is Rizzo, and he's a climber. So, you know, he'll go run along the water's edge, and there's where all the labs and, you know, everybody's playing fetch, but he likes to climb. And so he's back in the cottonwood trees and over the dunes and down the other side and on, you know, on the rocks. And that's what makes him really happy. So all of those features are present, and it makes it a really fun place for him to play and socialize with other dogs. I wonder if there's could some consideration be given to having a small dog area or times of the day that, you know, could be for small dogs, although that would be hard to, you know, have to meet that requirement. So maybe just a part of it that was for smaller dogs, because I know myself and a lot of other people that have small dogs, sometimes they get ganged up by the bigger dogs, and it would be nice to, you know, just have an area for small dogs. I like the wildness, and I can save this for later if you like, but I've been enjoying this whole winter, this past winter, actually last winter, and then, yeah, mostly last winter when it was the storms and the wild changes in the sand. And I walked there a lot in the winter. And I love the, you know, the tree roots and the stones and the things that were on the beach. And I noticed children playing with these objects that they would find. And so it's this wild feeling. And I wonder if there's any way we could try not to, you know, organize the beach such a way that everything is under control. Let there be a way for there to be some natural evolution and erosion if necessary, whatever, but let there be some part of the beach that's a little bit, has a feeling of wildness. And I think a dog park, I wouldn't go to. I just love the beach. I think it's beautiful. I like to walk there myself. So it's like a dual mission place for me, and I think for a lot of people that love the beauty of it. So that's all. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Whittle, and I have had many of the same experiences that most of you have had, depending on the water level. My dog, especially when she was younger, might have the tendency to run to the other side of the fence over to the aquatics beach. So I'm not sure of the solution with that. But I also agree with the signage. So especially in the pandemic, and granted it was special times when people were trying to get out in the pandemic, but there were more regular beachgoers that were trying to use the dog beach. And so that was an issue. And I know that the Park District was doing, an amazing job keeping the facility up and running, and kind of a one-off because we were in the pandemic. So, but I am aware of other people that use the dog beach, maybe that might come from different communities, and know when passes are being checked and not being checked, and might frequent the beach, do frequent the beach more often when they know that it's not really being monitored. Just more, more dogs, more sometimes is more chaos. So I guess giving priority to the people that have paid, is, I don't want to be exclusionary, but if we're all getting our vaccinations from our vets and paying the fee and whatever, then, and then for the safety of the dogs, because I've been down there and there have been some times where one dog may be aggressive. So that's the other situation where you do want to make sure that that everybody that's using the beach does have the vaccinations in case there is an aggressive dog. I love the idea of keeping the trees and the forever wild. And I know my dog likes to have the waterfront access. The dog fetches, loves to get wet, but also does love to go back and go in the trees, and also go out on the jetty a little bit and just run around, and loves the wild part. I thought the idea of incorporating the aquatics beach when it's not high time and being used was a super interesting idea. So I always use the table. The table's great. The table that's there every time I come. I seem to always have something to put on the table. Maybe a garbage facility like Martha said, but I'm not sure, maybe over to the side. I've also cleaned up a lot of times on that beach with Go Green Wilmette. So I'm always kind of gathering if there is some garbage. That would be great if there was a receptacle nearby. But thank you for including me. Thank you for asking my insights. I feel incredibly lucky to be a member of this community and have all of Gillson Beach, and especially a dog park. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Is there a rota to speak, or is it just whenever somebody wants to speak?
I think you're on. You're up.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, okay. Hello, I'm Shivani Vukul. I don't know if you can see me or not. My camera's a little weird today.
Yeah.
I joined late. I'm sorry. I had a work call that ran over, so I'm not entirely sure if what I'm going to say was already covered. But I endorse what I've heard about keeping the beach wild, and that last suggestion about extending to the aquatics beach would be fantastic, because in peak season it does get very busy there. The two things that I would ask for, if at all possible, and again this may have been covered, is some kind of a shower or hose to clean off feet and coats as you leave the dog beach before walking back to the car. It's not just a convenience for the dog owners, but you will see again at peak times that people have to get back to the car, then they're drying off their dogs, they're drying off their feet, and there are people lining up for parking, and it causes a lot of kind of confusion with people saying, get your dog off the side of the road when we're trying to dry them off. If there were a space where we could just hose them down, hose off our feet and get moving, I think that would move things along in terms of coming and going much more quickly in the peak times. And then the second thing would be, again, don't know if this is feasible, but in other dog parks that I go to, none of them as beautiful as Wilmette Beach, I would add, there is an in gate and an out gate. And while that might seem excessive, what it does is cuts down on the dogs trying to come in, dogs trying to go out, and you've got dogs who, no matter how well behaved they are, they will gate guard. So you end up in some situations. So an in and an out area that are separate, I think would be extremely helpful. Other than that, please keep it wild. please don't move it. I love where it is. I like that it's secluded and you don't have to walk anywhere else. And thank you again for the inclusion.
Thank you.
Great. Looking to see if there's anyone else that hasn't had a chance to speak here. It looks like we've hit everybody. As far as maybe we can open it up to just any other thoughts about Gillson. Yeah, obviously you guys really love the park, and are there other thoughts about things that you'd like to see or improvements throughout the rest of the park?
My dog would like the squirrels removed.
Moved.
I lived here for 30 years. My kids now are in their late 20s. That was the best park district, the best programs, anything that money could buy. They went to sports camp, aquatics camp, soccer camp. They spent years down at the beach. To me, everything was perfect. It'd be even more perfect if the dog beach was bigger, though. If you just went from rock to rock and just put a temporary fence out there for 9 months and pull it down when they need it for aquatics. Keep the one down the middle, you just add a fence and same way in, same way out. Just put a bow in there and it would add probably an acre and a half to the thing. It would just make it a lot easier on everybody instead of helping. I'd say twice a week I let my dogs back out of the car so their dog will come up to my dog so we can corral their dog because my dog will come to me.
Okay.
Do we have Steve, do we have the statistics that show how many beach pass holders are from Wilmette versus outside of Wilmette that are using this facility? I'm curious if other people are coming and tapping into a little gem here.
Yeah, we definitely have some non-resident usage. It's, the heavy percentages on the Wilmette side, but I could definitely get you those numbers. I don't have it at my fingertips.
No, I'm just interested. And from a global perspective, meeting the needs of pet owners in Wilmette, because we've been in this conversation with the communities, what other dog park facilities are provided throughout the community besides the beach?
Sure. Currently on the exact opposite end of town at West Park out on Lake Avenue by Myers is a off-leash area that actually we're in the process of getting permitting for to erect a fence to have an enclosed dog park area there. And the Parks and Recreation Committee and ultimately the Board of Park Commissioners are looking based on community feedback at other options central to the middle of town. We've looked at all of our parks throughout our park system and have narrowed it down to a couple of them, including Howard Park right there in the center of town at Ridge and Lake. So we're looking at options throughout the park or throughout the community, but we have 2 existing options at either end of the town. Neither one perfect for containing dogs though. One is a beach and one doesn't have a fence, but we're trying to address both.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just remembered one more thing, if you don't mind. Could I interject?
Please do.
It's minor, and it obviously won't be an issue this year either, the way things are going. But in the year when we don't have a major pandemic, when the dog beach is used for the fireworks, I don't know if it's who you contract with or the Wilmette Park District staff, but the beach is never cleaned up properly. And you bring the dogs in there the next day and there's leftover fireworks and detritus of all sorts of things, that some of which could be chemicals and not really that safe. So it would be lovely to see a point made of cleaning it up better when we open back up to the dogs. No problem with it being closed for the fireworks, you need the space, but when we get back, it's nice to have it safe.
Good to know, thank you.
One other thing, there's Evanston's closed its dog beaches down on the water. So there's a lot of Evanston people there. I mean, I don't care, their dogs are nice, but there is a lot of people from Evanston that just shoot up and use the beach.
You're saying in the wintertime?
In that town.
In the wintertime or the regular normal?
It doesn't matter now. They're closed in the beaches in Evanston for Park District, for their dog beaches are all closed. There's no beach left anymore. Because
their beach for their dog beach got washed out a couple years ago, Scott. So.
So we're getting their overflow, which is fine. I don't care.
No one's checking there.
Yeah, no one's checking. I mean, nobody checks unless it's the summertime.
I don't have a problem with that. I don't think I want to live in a gated community where we keep everyone out. I'm fine with people coming up to use it.
Yeah, what we should do though is make them do what they do to us, is get some kind of pass that they make us, anywhere you park in that town, you gotta pay. We should have a little keynote they can put $1 in every time they use it.
Have a
Is there, go ahead, sir.
Well, I was just going to follow up. I appreciate your asking more generally about what it is that we're interested in the park. I was wondering if you were familiar with the survey that was taken by the Park District in 2012, which stated pretty specifically what people were interested in and in what quantities to have done at the park.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, Ryrie, they have that information, and the direction from the board is we're looking at the balance of the park, and that survey is just one piece of their process, and getting information directly from the public is also part of the process. So they have all that information. They also have all the prior plans that existed prior to the beach house and parking lot that talk about roads and dog beach and utilities and all of that. So they have a wealth of knowledge, and they're just trying to get even more.
Well, the reason I ask about that is because while this is very nice, it's also very anecdotal and limited, very, very limited group of people. So when you're trying to figure out what the community wants as a whole, this is not a very efficient way of doing it or a very accurate way of doing it. And that's the reason why we did the survey, the Park District did the survey back then, is because it gave the greatest number of people the opportunity to weigh in. It was scientifically weighted. And so I would say that while as I said before, I appreciate this opportunity to weigh in and for all of us to have our own individual say, the survey that was done would seem to me to be overwhelming in terms of its weight, while circumstances change and the needs of the community change. That would seem to be a very good guidepost, as opposed to small groups with their particular interests. That's all.
No, I think you hit kind of an important piece of the puzzle. This is by no means all of our data collection, 12 people. I would call it, the process that we're going through is triangulating the data from multiple sources. So those sources represent 2012 survey, community interest survey, which we can all agree is a statistically valid survey. It points to the collective wisdom of a community and puts numbers and metrics to it, which we can live off of. That's the baseline. And nothing in that survey in terms of the topics or issues has changed. What we're really doing is now we're taking samplings of different user groups, different stakeholder groups, different interest groups, and different issues that have arisen since 2012, 2015, 18, post beach house, a whole host of other things. And we're revisiting them to reflect and to make sure that we can continue to concur with those assumptions, and then go back to the board and say, yep, we're hearing the exact same things we heard in 2012, exactly the same way and exactly at the same ratios. We're taking that data from different point sources and we're using it as the benchmark to come up with options and ideas that'll be then tested back with the community. This is one little piece in our engagement. There's going to be a community open house, virtual, as much as I hate to say it has to be virtual right now. There'll be a virtual process where we share lots of ideas, get lots of impact from the broadest spectrum of the community. Again, not statistically valid. I don't want to represent that we're doing a statistically valid survey. We're working with that previous data. We're going to come up with the ideas. We're going to test them. We're going to bring them out. We're going to share the goods, the bads, the priorities, the realities of what things cost so that we can achieve these ideas. I mean, it's nice to have them, but if you can't implement them, they're pointless and they get everybody worked up. So the point is, let's make sure that what we started with was good. Let's test it again. Let's test it during COVID. Let's test it after COVID, and let's make sure that it's still aligned with what people want. But we're not going off the reservation and creating brand new issues and opportunities above and beyond what you've already gone through. If that makes sense. There's a process to get to the end of this, and it has a significant amount of community input beyond just the Hollywood squares here right now. We're gonna get the whole community involved in the the conversation. So you're right on in terms of. I guess my point is you're right on. We're not. This is not the brain trust here that's going to solve all the problems of Gillson Park.
Hi, this is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, hi, this is Janine. I'm just wondering, what is your time frame?
Well, our time frame was initially it was probably about a 6-month process, 6 to 8 month process. It's gotten pushed along a little bit further out, and not at any fault of anybody other than we are operating in a bizarre world right now of data collection and Zooms and setting up meetings and trying to get out to sites and trying to look at things. So I think by the time we roll out a updated master plan that we've continued the engagement with the community, we're looking at late spring, early part of summer. Steve, is that consistent with your thoughts and the board's thoughts?
Yeah, I think we want to get as much information in as we can and make a good plan, and we don't want to artificially accelerate or slow down a process, and it's hard to get all that input during a pandemic. So we want the process to run and be fruitful. That's really the end goal.
And we will go ahead, Deb. Go ahead, Deb.
I'm just curious, do most people drive to the dog park and park along Overlook Drive?
I'll jump in on that one. I don't know if most do, maybe 60-40 drive, but you certainly see the people who drive much more readily than the people who walk in, because they can walk in from a number of different angles. If you drive, you have to park along Overlook Drive and then walk down parallel to the beach to get to and from the dog beach. There are some people who don't have parking passes who park, well, it used to be on Upper Drive, but on Michigan Avenue, and then walk in from there. So it's difficult to tell, which people have walked all the way and which people have just walked from there. But yes, many people walk from their homes down to the beach so that they can get some exercise, since most of us are standing around talking while the dogs run around while we're down at the beach.
Mm-hmm.
Add something?
Yes.
Hello? Okay, I'm Martha Hellander. One of my main concerns about Gillson Park, and maybe this is just a question, but for years, I've lived here for 29 years now. I've always loved walking. I would park my car at the south end of the beach, and I would walk all the way north up to, the very farthest north end, just before the buildings, and then all the way back. And that was a nice 45-minute walk. And I especially love it in the winter, or certainly, off season. And now it seems to be that there's barriers. Like there's a big sign that says, no entry, even though I was always told that it was legal to walk on the beach as long as you stayed close to the water. But the sign doesn't say that. It says no access. People are still walking there. And then you go further up, and then now I'm seeing a big pile of rocks out that's totally blocking the passage. So what's going on with that? And will that be open again to those of us who want to walk all the way up to the north end and back?
So I'll jump in here, Martha. I'm very well aware of the dynamic you're speaking of. It's something that I can personally say I don't enjoy the way it has been shifting over the last couple years. The village just recently, and maybe November, did a whole section of a board meeting on this topic to clarify what people's rights are and are not. And I was very much under the impression you were, that as long as you were walking on wet sand, you were fine, and you didn't necessarily have to be feet in the water. You could have shoes on and be fine, and not violating any rules. Their reading of the laws and what they explained is that that's not the case. That property owners own down to the water and in the water, so you have to actually be walking with your feet wet to be in compliance with your legal rights. And therefore, some of these stone revetments they've allowed to be rebuilt from prior revetments that were largely long gone and were largely away from the water's edge before the water levels came back up. Now they really are walls that prevent people from walking. And so ultimately, when the water levels go back down, which they have been doing over the last 12 months, we'll be able to get around those again. But they very specifically clarified that the feet have to be in the water, not just on wet sand or close to the water's edge.
Okay,
Now,
so
with that being said, most of the residents who live along there, they welcome, people walking, and one of those stone revetments, they even built stairs into it so people can get over it. And so it's an interesting issue that's become more prevalent because of the rebuilding of the stone revetments because of the higher water levels.
do they have a right to go X amount of feet out or yards out into the water, or where does that stop?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't know all the specifics. The legalities around ownership of private property on Lake Michigan in Illinois is a little bit different than some of the other surrounding states of Lake Michigan. I do believe they own to a certain point. When the water's up, if they wanted to run a fence down to their existing property line into the water, they could. Now, just like you see down at the dog beach, that fence isn't going to last very long. The lake is too strong for those fences. So that's why you don't see it, but they have those legal rights.
Which board meeting was it that you had about
To be
this?
honest with you, I don't remember. I can look it up and email you.
Read those minutes. Okay, and then there's one other thing I'd like to say about the dog beach, which is, I wish there were a way for residents who we have a dog beach permit for our dog, but I have a sister who lives in Oak Park, okay, and she's in a third floor walk up, and she has a husky. And once in a while, she'll come up here, visit me, and we want to take the dogs to the dog beach. And so I want to do things legally. So I went and I bought, and the only thing that was option was a season pass. And I paid $250, I think, or some huge amount of money. So she could, bring her, and she had to show the vaccination certificate and fax all that stuff. And we did that. And I think she maybe used it 3 times, but it would be nice if those of us who are residents who have the permit could have a one-time pass for a family member or somebody with a dog that we want to take with us to enjoy the beach that didn't require a season permit. I probably wouldn't be used very often, but occasionally it's nice.
If you join the health club at a platinum membership, you get two per person. So for family, it's 4 free passes to bring in a guest who's staying with you from out of town.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say though that Martha, you raised the point of the fact that you have to prove, in order to bring your dog on the beach, theoretically anyway, you have to prove that they've had all their vaccinations.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how that would work with a guest pass.
Well,
You'd have to have somebody.
Fax it in. We did it in one day. It was easy.
Uh-huh.
I'm not saying give up on those requirements, but to make it possible, just have the dog, maybe it's a family that's traveling through town and they have their dog, it just makes it easier for residents to have to bring someone. That's all. I think it would be nice.
And Martha, the village meeting I was talking about was December 8th.
December 8th. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, some of you brought up the idea that keeping the space for the dog beach wild was a priority, which is great because it's beautiful. You've got the lake, you've got the sand, and you've got, the tree line right there within close proximity. But I was wondering if there was any sort of interest in more specific programming throughout the beach, and you could make this nature play style where there's little areas for dogs to hurdle things or to run through little chutes or things like that that still fit within the character. But is something like that specific programming interesting, or is it the wide open nature of the space that's what's so wonderful about it?
If you're asking the dog owners, I would just say I think it's a great idea, but we would need more space. It's already packed during the summertime. So where would you put these things?
And I would say that, no, I don't think that there's any interest in that, that most of the dog owners that I've spoken to are very happy with the having the area, having the access to the water, having some shade, the different areas that the dogs can go is just fine. And they tend to entertain themselves with the other dogs. And, or if you have a dog that just likes to fetch, so that there's not a need for dog programming, at least not one that's been expressed to me.
To that, I would add, as a parent and author of a book called The Wild Gardener, and I'm into native plant gardening, is the same is true for children. You know, we don't need to program everything for the kids. There ought to be places where kids can go, where there's just, you know, like the woods and wild stuff and stones they can pick up, and don't groom everything, you know, so completely that it's boring. We had a tree cut down, a cottonwood, beautiful old cottonwood that I loved in Thornwood Park many years ago. And I noticed that when that tree was down and it was left laying there in sections for about a week, the kids were all over it. They loved it. You know, they like climbed on it, they jumped off of it, they were looking at the bark, they were counting the rings. Let there be more of that in Gillson Park. And may I say one word for the beaver? What's the status of the beaver? And I actually am rooting for the beaver. I would like to see it allowed to be and make a dam or a nest or whatever they make, and let's watch it and experience it.
I think the status of the beaver is he's very elusive.
You didn't catch him yet.
He's winning the war, so you're happy.
Well, I know, I think you need to protect the trees, but it is so interesting to see what that beaver is doing. And, you know, I'm curious about it. Is it a male? Is it a female? You know, where did it come from? Use it. You could use that as, you could have that could be an opportunity for the kids to learn something. Thank you.
Thanks for your.
Any other thoughts from anybody? We're coming up on the end of our meeting, but we want you all to know that you can always send thoughts and comments into us. I think Tom or Deb, we have a website connection through the Park District that we can get folks input and ideas. Even if we don't have our plans, if there's new ideas or thoughts, we want to hear from you. We do appreciate the comments that Gillson is a special place for lots and lots of reasons. Each person finds something very unique about it. And part of our job is to protect that character, not just to change it. So I would agree with you. I think there's a real good balance between protecting what is and adding and upgrading the character of the place.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that you did this and that you listened to us.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.